Be me 21 a few years ago, studying social sciences at a university on the East Coast. I wasn't just a student, I was an activist. My whole identity was wrapped up in it. My blog had a decent following. My friends and I ran a campus group for women's rights. We organized protests, ran workshops on consent, and called out problematic behavior wherever we saw it. To me, the world was simple. It was a structure, a system, and that system was the patriarchy. Men were, by and large, a product of that system. They were conditioned to see women as objects, as conquests, as things to be used. I truly believed this. It wasn't a theory, it was a fundamental law of the universe, like gravity. My friends and I would sit in coffee shops for hours, pointing out examples. The way a guy held a door open wasn't kindness, it was benevolent sexism. A compliment on an outfit was a microaggression, an attempt to reduce a woman to her appearance. We had a name for every transgression, a theory for every action. We were armed with terminology and a burning sense of righteousness. And in this worldview, there was a special category for guys like Ethan. He was in a few of my classes. Big guy, not fat, but broad-shouldered. Always wore plain hoodies and jeans. He barely ever spoke. In class discussions, he'd just sit there, listening. His face was unreadable. To my friends and me, he was a walking red flag. His silence wasn't shyness, it was observation. Predatory. His calm demeanor wasn't peaceful, it was suppressed rage. The strong, silent type was just a classic mask for a potential abuser. We'd mock him from a distance. We called him the lurker. I remember one time in a seminar, the professor asked a question about gender roles in media. I gave my usual well-rehearsed speech about objectification and the male gaze. Everyone in my circle nodded along. Then the professor, trying to get others involved, asked Ethan for his thoughts. He looked up, seemed surprised to be called on, and hesitated for a second. He said something simple about how maybe sometimes people just enjoy looking at beautiful things, and that it wasn't always that deep. The air in the room went cold. I didn't even let him finish. I cut him off, called his view dangerously simplistic, and launched into a tirade about how that kind of thinking normalizes harmful behavior. He just looked at me, didn't argue, and then looked down at his notebook for the rest of the class. For me and my friends, that was a huge victory. We had educated him. We had put a would-be misogynist in his place. I wrote a whole blog post about it that night, without using his name, of course. It was about confronting casual sexism in academic spaces. The post got hundreds of likes. I felt powerful. At the time, I was dating a guy who was the complete opposite of Ethan. He was an ally. He came to our rallies, used all the right words, and was a self-proclaimed feminist. My friends loved him. He was our mascot, our proof that some men could be properly trained. He'd repost my blog entries with captions like, "Listen to her," and "This is so important." He was my shield. If anyone questioned my views, I could just point to him. See? I don't hate men. I have a good one. Our relationship was my exhibit A in the case for my worldview. Life felt sordid. I had my cause, my community, and my perfect, ideologically sound boyfriend. The collapse happened around mid-semester. It was fast and brutal. I started noticing my boyfriend getting distant. He was being cagey with his phone. I confronted him, and he did what I'd read about 100 times. He turned it back on me. He said I was being paranoid, controlling. He used my own language against me, saying I was creating a toxic dynamic. It was masterful in a horrifying way. Then, a week or so later, I found out. He wasn't just cheating. He was cheating with a girl from my own activist group, one of my sisters. The whole thing blew up. But it got worse. To control the narrative, he did something I never could have imagined. He took screenshots of our private conversations, All the times I'd been vulnerable, insecure, or even just vented about my day, and posted them online. He framed it as him escaping an emotionally abusive relationship. He used every buzzword I had ever taught him. He painted me as a manipulative, hysterical hypocrite. The internet, even my small corner of it, is a cruel place. People I thought were my supporters turned on me instantly. My sisters in the activist group distanced themselves. They didn't want to be associated with the drama. The friend he cheated with wrote a long post about how she had been manipulated by me too, and how he had opened her eyes. In the span of about 72 hours, my entire social structure disintegrated. My reputation was trashed. My boyfriend was gone. My friends were gone. I was completely, utterly alone. I stopped going to classes for a week. I didn't leave my dorm room. I had to go back eventually. I was failing. Walking into class felt like walking through a minefield. The whispers, the stares. I sat in the back, head down, feeling like a ghost. And that's when the professor for my most important course announced the final project. A massive research paper and presentation worth 50% of our grade. And it would be done in pairs. Assigned pairs. He started reading the list. I just prayed I'd get someone quiet, someone I could ignore. And then he said my name, paired with Ethan. I felt the blood drain from my face. It was a cosmic joke. Of all the people in the world, I was now tied to the one man who represented everything I despised, the lurker. At a time when I felt more vulnerable and hateful towards men than ever before, I was being forced to work with him. Our first meeting was a disaster, at least from my perspective. We met in a small study room in the library. I got there 10 minutes late on purpose. I walked in with a wall of ice around me. I didn't make eye contact. I told him straight up that I wanted to get this over with as quickly as possible. I laid out a plan to divide the work completely. We would do our halves separately and then stitch them together at the end. Minimal contact. I was expecting an argument, a push for control, some kind of alpha male move. Instead, he just nodded. He looked at my plan, said it seemed efficient, and asked which half I wanted. His total lack of reaction was infuriating. It felt like he was mocking me by not engaging. I decided then and there that I wouldn't just work with him. I would prove myself right about him. I would push his buttons until the real Ethan, the monster I knew was hiding under that calm exterior, finally came out. My campaign of psychological warfare was, in my mind, brilliant. First, I started with incompetence. We were using a shared document to compile our research. He did his section on the history of the topic, and it was fine, well-researched, properly cited, annoyingly competent. A few days later, I was supposed to add my section. Instead, I accidentally deleted a huge chunk of his work, about 5 pages. I sent him an email dripping with fake panic. "Oh my God, Ethan, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. The document glitched when I opened it, and now your work is gone. I'm freaking out." I sat back, waiting for the angry reply, the accusation, the moment where he would finally show his true colors. About 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was an email from him. No problem. I figured that might happen, so I kept a backup. I just re-uploaded it. Let me know if you have any other issues. That was it. No anger, no suspicion, just a calm, practical solution. He had anticipated a problem and prepared for it. It was maddening. My next tactic was to attack his time, to prove he had that classic male entitlement, that his time was more valuable than mine. We had a meeting scheduled to review our first draft, Tuesday at 4 p.m. in the library. I just didn't show up. I left my phone on silent and went for a walk. I imagined him sitting there, checking his watch, getting more and more irritated. I pictured the angry texts he must be sending. "Where are you?" "This is unprofessional." "You're wasting my time." I wanted to see that frustration. I wanted him to feel disrespected. I got back to my room around 6 p.m. and checked my phone. There was only one message from him, sent at 4:45 p.m. It said, "Hey, assuming you got held up, I went through your section and left a few comments. It looks good. I also wrote up a quick outline for the presentation. It's in the shared folder. Let me know what you think." He hadn't just waited. He had done my work for me. He had organized the next step of the project without me. There was no hint of annoyance in the message. It was purely factual. He wasn't playing my game. He wasn't playing any game at all. He was just trying to get the project done. This wasn't going how I'd planned, so I decided to escalate. If passive aggressiveness wouldn't work, I'd go for direct confrontation. Our next meeting, I came in hot. He started talking about the structure for the presentation, and I cut him off. Whatever he suggested, I shot it down. I used my full arsenal of activist jargon. He suggested we open with a historical overview. I told him that was a patriarchal approach to knowledge, prioritizing a linear, male-dominated timeline. He proposed we use a certain set of statistics. I accused him of mansplaining the data to me and told him his interpretation was colored by his inherent privilege. I was condescending, dismissive, and openly hostile. Every sentence out of my mouth was designed to be an intellectual and personal attack. I was trying to make him feel stupid and bigoted. I wanted him to get angry. I wanted him to yell. I wanted him to tell me I was being impossible. But he never did. Through the entire hour-long barrage, he just sat there, listening patiently. When I'd finish a rant, he'd pause for a second, and then ask, in a perfectly level tone, "Okay, I see your point. What do you suggest we do instead?" He wasn't defending himself. He was treating my insults like valid academic critiques. He refused to get drawn into a fight. He just kept steering the conversation back to the work. It was like punching a ghost. My attacks went right through him. By the end of the meeting, I was the one who was exhausted and flustered. He was just as calm as when we started. We had made zero progress on the project, and the deadline was now looming. I left that room feeling more confused and frustrated than ever. My entire framework for understanding men was failing. This one guy, this quiet, unassuming guy I had written off as a monster, was systematically dismantling my entire belief system just by being decent. And I absolutely hated him for it. I felt like I was losing my mind. The project was due in a week, and I was running out of time and ideas. I knew the next confrontation would have to be the last one. The deadline was less than 48 hours away. We had to pull an all-nighter to get the presentation slides done. The university had these study rooms you could book, and we got one on an empty floor of the humanities building. By midnight, the entire building was a ghost town. It was just the two of us under the flat, humming fluorescent lights. The air was thick with tension. I was running on coffee and pure spite. He was being methodical, just as always, arranging slides, checking sources. His calmness felt like a personal insult. I hadn't eaten. I was exhausted from the stress of my personal life imploding and this academic nightmare. Something inside me was about to snap. I needed a reaction. I needed him to break. He pointed at a slide I had written. "This part," he said, his voice even. "The phrasing is a little strong. Maybe we could tone it down to sound more objective." That was it. That was the spark. I just stared at him. And then I started to laugh. It was not a happy sound. "Objective?" I repeated, my voice shaking. "You want me to be objective?" I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You have no idea what's going on, do you? You just sit there, quiet and judging, like you're above it all." He looked up at me, his expression unreadable. He didn't say anything, which only made me angrier. "You love this, don't you?" I was pacing now. "Seeing me like this. My life is falling apart, and I'm stuck here with you. It must be a real treat for you." My voice started to climb. I was almost shouting. "You're just like every other guy. You're just better at hiding it. You're waiting for me to break down completely so you can play the hero, or make a move, or whatever it is you people do." I leaned over the table, my hands flat on the surface. I wanted to see him flinch. "You think I don't see it? The way you look at me? You're a predator, just a patient one. You are enjoying my humiliation." He finally moved. He didn't get angry. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even look scared. He just looked tired, immeasurably tired. He slowly closed his laptop. The soft click echoed in the silent room. Then he started packing his bag, his charger, his notebook, a textbook. Each movement was deliberate and calm. He slung his backpack over one shoulder and finally looked at me. His eyes were clear. There was no anger, no pity, no lust. There was nothing. "Mary," he said, and his voice was flat. Not mean, not kind, just empty. "I don't care about your life." The words hit me like a physical blow. "I don't know what's going on with you, and I don't want to know. It's not my business. I'm not enjoying your suffering. I'm not thinking about you at all." He paused, gesturing vaguely at the scattered papers on the table. "This is a project. We are partners. We need to get a passing grade. That is the only reason I have spoken to you, the only reason I am here." He walked towards the door. "I have finished my half. The research, the slides, everything. It's all in the shared folder. You just need to do your part, or don't. I've done enough that I probably won't fail, even if you contribute nothing." He opened the door and stopped, his back to me. "For the record, I wasn't looking at you. I was looking at a person who made my life harder at every turn for reasons I don't understand. Get the work done, or don't." And then he was gone. The door clicked shut, and I was left alone in the silent, sterile room. The silence was deafening. My grand speech, my accusations, my entire psychological assault. It had all meant nothing to him. It wasn't because he was a monster. It was because, to him, I wasn't an object of desire or a target for his rage. I wasn't anything. I was just a difficult assignment. All my theories about his suppressed rage, his predatory nature, it was all fantasy. I had built a villain in my head because my worldview required one. And the real person was just a student who wanted to pass his class. I stood there for a long time. Then I slowly sank back into my chair. I opened the shared folder on my laptop. His half of the presentation was perfect, clean, professional, meticulously organized. He had even created a template for my slides to make it easier for me to fill them in. He hadn't just done his work. He had made it as easy as possible for me to do mine, even after everything I had put him through. I felt a wave of shame so profound it made me nauseous. I worked the rest of the night. I didn't just finish my slides. I made them the best I possibly could. I checked every source, polished every sentence. I did it because, for the first time, I felt like I owed it to him. The day of the presentation was tense. We met outside the classroom 10 minutes before. We didn't speak. We walked in together, stood at the front of the room, and delivered the presentation. We were a perfect team. We transitioned smoothly between our parts, answered the professor's questions clearly. From the outside, we looked like two students who had collaborated flawlessly. We got an A. When it was over, I turned to him, maybe to say thank you or sorry or something. But he was already walking away. He didn't look back. I never spoke to him again for the rest of our time at university. We'd sometimes pass each other in the halls, and he'd give a slight neutral nod, the kind you give a stranger you vaguely recognize, and I'd just look away. 2, maybe 3 years passed. I graduated. I got a job in a city a few hours away. My old life, the activist life, felt like a dream someone else had. I didn't blog anymore. I had a few quiet friends from work. My fiery certainty about the world had been replaced by a quiet, persistent uncertainty. I was more inclined to listen than to speak. I had dated a couple of guys. It never went anywhere. I was too guarded, too unsure of my own judgment. I still carried that shame with me. One Saturday afternoon, I was in a small park near my apartment, reading a book on a bench. It was a nice day. Sunny, a light breeze, families were out, people walking their dogs, and then I saw him. It was Ethan. He looked different. The constant tension in his shoulders was gone. He was wearing a simple button-down shirt. He looked happy, at ease. He wasn't alone. He was with a girl. She was pretty, in a simple, unstyled way. She had a bright, genuine smile. Her name, I would later find out from a mutual acquaintance's social media, was Donna. I watched them. I couldn't look away. They had a picnic blanket spread out on the grass. He was leaning back on his elbows, watching her as she told a story, her hands gesturing animatedly. And the way he looked at her. It was with a kind of gentle, open adoration that I had only ever read about in books. It wasn't the hungry look of a predator. It wasn't the possessive stare of an owner. It was the look of a man who was seeing his entire world. She laughed at something he said, and she playfully pushed his shoulder. He caught her hand, and that's when I saw it. A simple, elegant engagement ring on her finger. My breath caught in my chest. He brought her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, never breaking eye contact with her. She blushed a little, a real, unforced blush. In that single, quiet moment, my entire broken ideology was ground into dust. I had spent years building a theory of the world based on the idea that men like him saw women as nothing more than bodies. I had looked at Ethan and seen a monster, a potential abuser, a walking red flag. But I was wrong. I was so profoundly, devastatingly wrong. He wasn't looking for a body. He was looking for a soul. And he had found one. In her. The whole time I had been projecting my theories and my bitterness onto him. He had just been quietly living his life, waiting to find someone he could love. He was the one man who had been put to the ultimate test in my life. He had been there when I was at my most vulnerable, my most hysterical, my most broken, and he had shown me nothing but a quiet, detached decency. He hadn't tried to take advantage. He hadn't tried to save me. He had just respected my autonomy. Even when I was being horrible, he had seen me, the real, ugly, struggling me. And he had decided he wanted nothing to do with it, not out of malice, but because he was looking for something else, something good, something he found in Donna. I had been standing face to face with the one thing I claimed to want, a man who saw beyond the physical, and I had called him a monster. I had tried to destroy him for it. I closed my book and quietly walked away before they could see me. He had proven me wrong about everything, and his reward was a lifetime of happiness with someone else. My punishment was the knowledge that I had been the one who was truly blind.